one evening with my son, Ethan, was undoubtedly the most bewildering yet strangely uplifting experience of my life. My name is Sarah, and I want to share the journey of what unfolded between Ethan and me. It's not simple to discuss, but I've held it within for too long. Ethan is now 20, but this began a few years ago after my husband, David, passed away. Losing David was one of the hardest challenges I've ever faced, leaving Ethan and me to navigate life without him. The early days were tough. Ethan grew reserved, often retreating to his room or spending time with friends. He avoided mentioning David or his passing, and I didn't want to push him. Instead, I focused on creating a comforting home environment. I prepared his favorite meals, left encouraging notes on his desk, and made sure he knew I was there if he needed to talk. But for months, he remained withdrawn. Then one evening, he wandered into the kitchen as I cleaned up after dinner. His sudden presence startled me, but I was pleased to see him. It was rare for him to seek me out. "Mom, can I lend a hand?" he asked, his voice gentle yet steady. I turned, surprised by his offer. "Sure, you can dry the dishes," I said, handing him a towel. We worked quietly for a bit, and I felt a small wave of relief. It was the first time he'd chosen to spend time with me, a hint of normalcy returning. "How's school going?" I asked, hoping to spark a conversation. "It's okay," he replied, eyes down. That was it. I didn't press further. "I'm always here if you need to talk," I added, watching him closely. He nodded, but stayed silent. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle shifts. Ethan began lingering around me more. He'd join me in the living room during TV time or help with small chores. He even started sharing bits about his hobbies and college plans. I felt a spark of hope that we were finding our way back to each other. But one evening, something happened that shook my confidence. We were eating dinner together. Ethan had made a simple stir-fry he'd learned from a friend. As we ate, he looked at me and said, "Thanks for everything, Mom." His tone was earnest. "It means a lot to me," I replied, keeping my voice light. But his gaze held an intensity that unsettled me. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," he said, shaking his head. "Just wanted to say thanks." I nodded, unsure how to respond. The moment felt odd, but I told myself I was overthinking it. He was just being kind, right? That night wasn't the turning point, but it marked the start of a shift. Ethan began finding reasons to be near me, sitting close on the couch, lingering in the kitchen while I cooked. At first, I found it endearing, thinking he was trying to reconnect after our shared grief. But then, I noticed his glances lingered too long. His compliments grew more personal. "You look really nice today, Mom," he said one morning as I cleaned dishes. "Thanks, sweetie," I replied, aiming for casual. But his tone and stare made me uneasy. One night, we watched a familiar comedy on the couch. Midway through, I realized Ethan was sitting closer than usual, our arms nearly touching. When I shifted, he didn't move, "You're always so busy," he said, breaking the silence. "You never take time for yourself." I smiled, caught off guard. "That's just what moms do, Ethan. There's always something to handle." He nodded, eyes fixed on me. "You do so much. You deserve a break." His words tugged at my heart. "You're sweet," I said, "but I'm okay, really." That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the moment endlessly. Was it innocent, or was I sensing something else? What was happening between us? Soon, I noticed Ethan seeking me out more. If I was gardening, he'd sit nearby. If I was cooking, he'd chat in the kitchen. His compliments continued, each one stirring more discomfort. Deep down, I realized I was mirroring his behavior, lingering near him too. "You make this house feel so warm," he said one day as I folded laundry. I froze, unsure how to respond. "Thanks, Ethan," I said, forcing a smile. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to dismiss my unease, convincing myself Ethan was just being affectionate, bridging the gap David's death had left. But it wasn't just the compliments. It was his constant presence, his watchful eyes. One afternoon, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, I heard Ethan enter the kitchen, his steps soft. I kept my focus on the cutting board, hoping he'd grab a snack and leave. "Can I help, Mom?" he asked. I glanced over with a quick smile. "Sure, chop these peppers," I said, sliding the board toward him. He stepped close, his movements careful, and began chopping. We worked in silence, and I thought it'd be a normal moment. But then he paused, set down the knife, and turned to me. "You've done so much for me," he said, voice low. I looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Since Dad died, you've held everything together," he said, eyes locked on mine. "You didn't have to, but you did." Emotion welled in my chest. "Of course, Ethan. You're my son. I love you," I said, trying to stay composed. He nodded, but his gaze didn't waver. "I've never really thanked you for that." "You don't need to," I said, turning back to the stove. "It's what moms do." He didn't reply, but I felt his eyes on me. The moment felt heavy, and I longed for it to pass. That night, I sat on the couch with a book, hoping to escape into its pages. Ethan entered and sat beside me, not at the far end, but close. "What are you reading?" he asked, leaning to see the cover. "Just a novel," I said, showing him. "Nothing fancy." "Can I read with you?" he asked. The request surprised me. Ethan hadn't cared about books since he was young, and we hadn't shared moments like this in years. Part of me wanted to say no, to claim my space, but I didn't want to push him away. "Sure," I said, keeping my tone even. Later, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft knock. "Mom." Ethan's voice was hesitant. I sat up, heart racing. "Yes. Can we talk?" His words were gentle, almost pleading. I nodded, gesturing for him to enter. Ethan sat on the bed's edge, not too close. His face held a mix of emotions I couldn't quite read. "What's wrong?" I asked, bracing myself. He was quiet, then said, "I want to talk about what's happening between us." The words hung heavy, and my pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked up, eyes full of uncertainty. I don't want you to feel uneasy, he said softly. But I feel like something's different between us. I think you feel it too. His words hit hard, and I struggled to respond. Ethan, I began, but stopped, unsure how to articulate the tangled emotions inside me. I wanted to protect him, but also shield myself from whatever this was. He watched me, waiting. The silence was suffocating. I glanced at the clock late, well past his usual bedtime. Is something bothering you? I asked, sitting up. I just needed to talk, he said. I set my book aside and sighed. Go ahead, I said. Ethan entered, looking smaller, less sure, like the boy I'd comfort after bad dreams. He stood at the door, hesitant. What's wrong? I asked, patting the bed. He sat slowly, eyes on the floor. I'm sorry, he said finally, for making you uncomfortable. I know I've been acting strange, and I don't want you to think I'm making things weird. I blinked, struck by his candor. Ethan, I started, but he cut in. I'm feeling a lot, and I don't know how to deal with it, he said, voice shaky. But I don't want to upset you. His words carried weight I couldn't fully grasp. I placed a hand on his shoulder. It's okay to feel confused, I said gently. But I'm your mom, and our relationship has boundaries. He sighed, eyes glistening. I know, I'm sorry, he said softly. I gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Don't worry, we'll figure this out together. He stood, exhaling. Good night, Mom, he said quietly, leaving the room. Watching him go, I felt relief mixed with unease. Acknowledging the tension felt like progress, but I wondered if normalcy was possible. I was right to wonder, because the next time, things unfolded differently. The next morning, I woke exhausted, Ethan's words echoing in my mind. I moved through my routine, trying to shake the unease. Ethan was quieter, spending more time in his room. I wanted to check on him, but felt he needed space. That evening, as I folded laundry in the living room, Ethan sat on the couch, watching me silently. The silence was heavy, and I struggled to break it. You're quiet today, I said, glancing at him. He shrugged. Thinking about anything specific, I asked, keeping my tone steady. About us, he said, voice barely audible. My heart sank. What do you mean? I asked carefully. He met my eyes. I know things have been weird, and I don't want it to stay that way, he said. I listened, unsure how to reply. I don't either, I said finally, but we need to figure out how to move forward. He sighed, a faint smile appearing. We'll get there, he said. For a moment, I felt hope. Maybe we could navigate this and restore our bond. But deep down, I sensed we were teetering on something I didn't fully understand. The tension in the house lingered. Ethan tried acting normal, but I saw his hesitation, his careful words. I wanted to believe his apology marked the end, but I knew it wasn't that simple. One night, as I scrolled my phone to unwind, a soft knock startled me. Mom, Ethan's voice was tentative. I sat up, heart pounding. Yes, can I come in? He asked. It was past midnight. Ethan it's late, I said firmly. What's wrong? I need to talk, he said. Something in his tone made me pause. Okay, come in, I said. He entered, hands in pockets, standing at the door. What's wrong? I asked, trying to stay calm. I've been thinking about what I said, he began, voice low. And I need to be honest. My chest tightened. Honest about what? I asked. He sat on the bed's edge. About how I feel, he said, voice trembling. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you, Mom. You've been everything since Dad died. You're strong, caring. I can't stop feeling this. His words stunned me. I stared, mind racing. Ethan, you can't, I started, but he cut in. I know it's wrong, he said, voice desperate. But I can't help it. You've done so much for me. Ethan, you're my son, I said, voice shaking. I love you, but not like that. This has to stop. I know, he whispered, tears in his eyes. I just had to tell you. I placed a hand on his shoulder. What you're feeling comes from our loss, I said. It's not real. You're young, confused, but this is wrong. We'll work through this together. He exhaled, shoulders slumping. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't want to hurt you. I know, I said, heart aching. But we can't let this continue. You're a good person, Ethan. You'll get past this. He wiped his eyes and stood. Good night, Mom, he said softly, leaving. I locked the door, trembling, and sat on the bed, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion. How had we reached this point? I barely slept, replaying his words, telling myself it was a phase. But I wasn't certain. The next morning, Ethan was quiet at breakfast, leaving for school without much talk. I felt relief and sadness, my mind stuck on our conversation. That afternoon, Ethan returned, avoiding eye contact and retreating to his room. I wanted to check on him, but felt lost. That night, I sat in the living room, the TV a faint distraction. Footsteps approached. Ethan stood at the door, expression unreadable. Can I sit with you? He asked. I hesitated, then nodded. Of course. He sat, leaving space between us. We sat in silence, the tension thick. Mom, he said finally, I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said quickly, but we need boundaries, Ethan, for both of us. He nodded slowly. I understand. I placed a hand on his knee. We'll get through this, I said gently. Trust me. He met my eyes, emotions swirling. I trust you, he said. I smiled, hoping to reassure him. Deep down, I felt a flicker of hope, but knew it'd take time. The following days were tense, but quieter. Ethan kept his distance, and I tried acting normal, though the weight lingered. I hoped setting boundaries would help, but part of me feared the silence wouldn't heal what was broken. One night, exhausted, I went to bed early. The house was still, the open window letting in a cool breeze. I was drifting off when a creak woke me. Mom, Ethan's voice was soft. I sat up, fumbling for the lamp. Light spilled over Ethan, standing nervously at the door. Ethan, what's wrong? I asked, voice thick with sleep. I couldn't sleep, he said quietly. I needed to see you. My chest tightened. It's late, I said firmly. Go back to bed. I know, he said, eyes meeting mine, but I can't stop thinking about everything. I swung my legs off the bed, sitting up. Ethan, we've talked about this, I said gently. I love you, but we can't keep circling this. He stepped closer, expression torn. I know it's wrong, he said, voice shaking. But you've always been there, caring for me like no one else. My throat tightened. I care for you because I'm your mom, I said firmly. That's my role. What you're feeling isn't healthy. It's wrong. He stood still, my words sinking in. I'm sorry, he said, tears glinting. I didn't know how to say this. My heart broke, but I stayed calm. It's okay to be confused, I said, but this is something you need to work through. I'll help you as your mom. He looked down, defeated. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. You won't, I said, but we need to move forward for both of us. In that moment, doubt crept in. Why couldn't I help him through this differently? Seeing his pain tugged at me, and I wondered if I was too harsh. Maybe our shared grief blurred lines. Come here, I said, patting the bed. He sat, and I looked into his eyes. We'll figure this out, I said softly. The tension eased, and we shared a quiet moment like old times. It felt right, comforting, but I knew we hadn't crossed any lines. You okay? I asked after a while. Yeah, he said, voice steadier. Thanks, Mom. We sat in silence, the fan's hum filling the room. Then Ethan stood. Good night, he said, emotion in his voice. Good night, I replied, heart heavy yet hopeful as he left. You're welcome. He paused at the door. No, thank you, he said, closing it behind him. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, the past weeks swirling in my mind. The road ahead would be long, but I felt hope we could rebuild something healthier. The next morning, Ethan seemed calmer at breakfast, more at ease. The conversation was light, and I sensed he'd let go of some weight. Over the next weeks, things improved. Ethan hung out with friends more, focusing on school and his future. We didn't revisit that night, but we both knew we were moving forward. One evening, as we watched the sunset on the porch, he turned to me. Thanks for being patient, Mom, he said, for everything, accepting me, helping me, even with stuff most moms don't talk about. I looked at him, touched. That's what moms do, I said, placing a hand on his. He smiled, genuine and warm. I knew we'd be okay. I'm still unsure about some choices. It's happened a few times since, and I find myself caught in it too. Maybe it's our way of coping with David's loss, or maybe it's something else. I'm sharing this to get perspectives. Should I stop this dynamic with Ethan, or is it more common than I think? I'd love to hear your thoughts.